Have we slid into a recession? Yes, we have. Don't buy President Bush's jargon that we're not in a recession. There are more unemployed people now than there were several years ago. Notice what they say. Head title: Global Systematic Crisis, September 2008. The phase of the collapse of the U.S. real economy. Here's what they say. European report. According to LEAP E2020, I guess that's their newspaper, the end of the third quarter of 2008, which is September 30th, next month, will be marked by a new tipping point in the unfolding of the global systematic crisis. At that time, indeed, the cumulated impact of the various sequences of the crisis, see table below, they have a graph down there, will reach its maximum strength and affect decisively the very heart of the systems concerned, on the front line of which is the United States, epicenter of the current crisis. Now here's this. In the United States, this new tipping point will translate into a collapse of the real economy. The final socio-economic stage of the serial bursting of the housing and financial bubbles and the pursuance of the U.S. dollar fall. The collapse of the U.S. real economy means a virtual freeze of the American economic machinery, private and public bankruptcies in large numbers, companies and public services closing down massively. You know that Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger in my state of California recently, I think it was last week or the week before, recently signed an executive order. It was in the news. He signed an executive order giving the majority of state workers a minimum wage in order so that California could meet its state budget. Doesn't matter how much seniority you had, you could have a federal job, and under executive order, you get $6.75 an hour so that California can meet its budget crisis. Isn't that interesting? It's happening all over the place. Now let me give you one more. This is a report that I just received giving one more witness to what may happen in September. This man who wrote this report, he was interviewed by an internet program called Conscience Media Network. Pardon me. This man's name is George Green. How many of you have heard of George Green before? Anybody? A couple of you have heard of George Green. George Green is a former investment banker. He was a registered financial principal with the NASD. He's a former broker-dealer, a securities underwriter, real estate developer, insurance broker, and publisher. And by the way, he was also invited to become a part of the power elite. He, by God's grace, declined that invitation. And so he is an insider to the financial markets. Is that pretty clear? What does George Green say is about to take place? Here's what George Green just gave a report about what took place in July. Now, July was what? Last month, right? At the beginning of July, the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, by the way, is a front line, for the Illuminati. It works along with the World Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And the Bank for International Settlements, that's owned in Switzerland, under Rothschild, the Rothschild banking dynasty, the Bank of International Settlements stated that it wanted to audit the U.S. Federal Reserve. They want to audit our banking system. And President Bush reluctantly had to agree to this. He said, well, look, okay, you can audit us, but let me leave office first. Now, why did he say that? Did you know that President Bush, by the way, President Bush is actually in the process of an impeachment process. Now, it's not on the mainline media. U.S. Representative Dennis Kucinich in the House of Representatives just recently introduced on the House floor and before the committee 35 articles of impeachment. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who was a Roman Catholic Jesuit-trained young lady, when Pope Benedict XVI came, she apparently was able to go and kiss his hand and I guess tell her that she loved him. I don't know what she did. But apparently, and I'm not saying that to be funny, but it's true. Nancy Pelosi, by the way, this was on mainline news during the break, that the Republicans were trying to, and I'm not in all this party politics, but I find it very interesting. The Republicans apparently were trying to pass what's called the American Energy Act, trying to get lower prices for energy for Americans for the winter. Nancy Pelosi proceeded to turn off all of the lights and shut off all of the microphones while the Republicans were on the floor and said it's time to dismiss for summer break. And the Republicans began to scream at her, saying, "Work, work, work." She then commanded the Congress police to go and shut down all of the media cameras while the Republicans stayed in the dark trying to argue their points. So Nancy Pelosi has a very interesting personality. And this woman, Nancy Pelosi, recently also refused to listen to the impeachment process for President Bush. She said it would be too divisive for our nation. And so, very interesting. I wonder who she's working for. When we look at this right here, do you know also that President Bush has recently, I think it's under executive order, has commanded that any documents of what he has done during his last 8-year tenure in office has a seal on it that cannot be looked at for 50 years after he leaves office. Do you know that? No congressman, no senator, no lawmaker, no Supreme Court justice, certainly not any American peon citizen like you and I, can have any right to look at any decision that he's done over the last 8 years until 50 years goes by. Why? What is he hiding? Now here's what they say. Here's what George Green says about what may happen when the bank audits the Federal Reserve. However, when the truth inevitably leaks out on the 30th of September 2008, next month, clearly the Bank of International Settlements will no longer be prepared to accept the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is now completely bankrupt, brothers and sisters. And the Bank of International Settlements knows it, and it wants an audit of the U.S. Federal Reserve System to find out how much money they've been printing that has no backing to it. And as a result, next month, our nation may be declared officially insolvent or bankrupt. If our nation is officially declared bankrupt, then we may see a crash of the economy. Now, at the same time, I find it very interesting, at the same time of what is taking place with the economy, there are some other things taking place with wars. Now, I just read an article by a woman. Her name is Dr. Ellen Brown. Dr. Ellen Brown is a former attorney in Los Angeles who began to investigate the financial system. And Dr. Ellen Brown is now an economic specialist. She's written actually books. One is called The Web of Debt. The other, it describes the Federal Reserve System and how it's based. And an article that she just wrote on globalresearch.ca, the title is Wag the Dog. Wag the Dog is named after that movie. Anyone remember that movie with, I think it was Dustin Hoffman and others? I didn't watch it. Apparently it was about how because the economy, the nation was in a crisis, they caused a fake war to take place to get the people distracted off of the nation's problems onto a foreign war. And there's nothing better, there's nothing that is more profitable to the international banking system than a war. Matter of fact, that's the way that we got out of the Great Depression, wasn't it? Go to war. World War II was the way we propped up our economy. And so here's the title. It says, Wag the Dog, How to Conceal a Massive Economic Collapse. How do you conceal a massive economic collapse taking place? She says, you go to war.